We're talking about salt. It's a staple in most food. It could soon be regulated if the Institute of Medicine has its way. Dr. Elizabeth Salata is here to talk about salt, why we love it, and how much is too bad for you.
That's right.
So welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank
and you know, this is obviously something that the government is taking into kind of a strong consideration as to the ill effects of too much salt in our bodies. What's your take?
Well, we've known for a long time that salt can influence blood pressure, and blood pressure influences heart disease and stroke risk. So what the government's trying to do is save lives. You can save about 100,000 lives per year if they regulate sodium. Other countries are starting to do this already. Europe, Japan, abroad countries.
So when you say regulate sodium, I mean, what kinds of power would the government have on controlling how much salt we put in our bodies?
Well, what happens is that the government regulates what goes into our food supply. And so by regulating what goes into restaurant food, what goes into packaged and processed foods, they can help us to do a better job to take care of ourselves. Now, they've been trying to educate us for a long time about the fact that salt is not good for us.
Okay.
But we, as a society, haven't done a very good job of listening.
Right.
So the government's trying to help us to do a better job of taking care of our health by taking salt out of things that they put into things, because salt tastes good. Salt makes food taste good. So the problem is about 75% of us go out to eat at least once a week. And 75% of our food is from either processed foods or restaurant foods. And that's the culprit, because we don't need a whole lot of salt in our diet typically, but we're getting about 3 or 4 times what we really need. So the government's stepping in to say, you know what, let's help the public to do a better job, because we're going to save 100,000 lives per year. We're going to save a lot of money. We're going to cut down on heart disease and stroke risk. So that's why they're stepping in to try to help us to do a better job in our schools, in restaurants, fast foods. You know, it's just become such an epidemic, and the government really feels that they can save money and save lives by doing this. So that's their whole take.
Okay, so let's talk about, you brought in some foods that, first of all, you brought in examples of normal salt intake and what's good salt intake, and that's rather surprising.
It is.
And then tell me about the foods as well.
Okay, so what we have here, if you can kind of do a close-up on the salt, this is what's recommended, and it's not a lot. It's about a teaspoon of salt a day.
Very
it's about
small
2,000 milligrams. This is what the average person takes in, which is about 4,000 milligrams. So this is just with dining out, packaged foods. If we want to pass on over, some of the bigger culprits are processed foods. For example, this is 2 servings. This is 2,000 milligrams. 1 can of soup. So that's all you need in a day. So what they've done, they have now lower salt alternatives, about half the salt. Again, a packaged food that has, you know, about 1,500 milligrams if you eat 2 servings, which most people eat more than 1 serving. And then we have alternatives with no salt. So the trick is to read your label, because you can read the sodium content on a label and come up with what you should take in a day. And again, 1,500 milligrams a day for most people is more than enough.
And quickly, let's talk about the people who maybe should be consuming 1,500 milligrams or less. I mean, we've got a full screen on that we can show.
The higher risk people, and I hate to say it, but getting older puts you at a little higher risk for high blood pressure. So the government suggests that if you're over 40, you should really limit your salt intake. African Americans are known to be hypertensive as a high risk category. So, and hypertensive people in general, about a third of the population is hypertensive. The risk of excessive salt intake includes, again, hypertension, heart disease, stroke, fluid retention, and weight gain. So that's why, again, the government's stepping in to try to help us.
Which is interesting, because salt, I mean, it's been here through the ages. You know,
it preserves food, it tastes good.
But I think as we evolve, our reliance on salt as being a preserver or a flavor enhancer can change.
And the thing is, too, is I think people eat more when things taste better. So you go out to eat and you eat your whole entire meal, which is, you know, often a bigger portion anyway. So I think it'll really help us. And the nice
thing, when I get my bowl of French fries and I look for my huge salt.
And the thing is most fast food meals, like if you take your average burger and fries, that's about 1,500 milligrams. That's all we need in a day. And they have come up now with some alternatives. This is regular salt, and then a 50% light salt, and then a no salt. So you can flavor food in other ways other than adding just salt to everything.
All right. Well, Dr. Salata, I appreciate you joining us. Some good information. And again, this is something that the government says is pretty important. We're going to maybe start acting on it. So
gradually reducing. They're not just going to shock us.
Right. So thanks for joining us. And for more information on what we've been talking about in regards to salt, you can go to san diego6.com and click on Hot Topics.